If you've watched this channel for any length of time, you'll know that we like to cover the entire world of cleaner, greener, safer and smarter vehicles. That doesn't just mean high-end, high-performance electric cars, it also means more practical vehicles, and it doesn't just mean big multinational companies, but also smaller startups and the innovations that they are doing to bring about this transition to cleaner, greener fuels. And today, I've got the honour of speaking to Mark Hanchett from Atlis Motor Vehicles. This is the third video that we've done in this series, and I hope you'll join me for this very informal discussion about what Atlis has done, where it's going, and some of the cool technology that it has, that it's working to bring to its production vehicles. Now, earlier this week, when we're recording this, it'll be a couple of weeks' time when you actually watch this on YouTube, we actually did a video on Atlis's most recent quick battery demonstration, quick charging battery demonstration. And Atlis reached out and said, hey, would you like to have a chat with Mark about it, maybe go a little bit more in depth? So Mark, thank you so much for joining me today. I hope that you and yours are safe at this troubled time. I know that Atlis has been working really hard to keep all of its employees safe with COVID-19 ravaging the United States right now.
Yeah, hey, thank you for having me. And yeah, absolutely. COVID has been a challenge for everyone, but Atlis is in a unique position where we can overcome some of those challenges. We're early enough that we don't have structure built that prevents us from keeping things moving forward.
So you're actually being really mobile about it. I've seen some pictures of your facility that you have there in Arizona, correct?
Correct. Yes, we're in Arizona.
And you've been working with your team. Some of your team have been distance working. Some people have been coming in. Obviously, everybody's been keeping themselves safe. But let's cut to the chase, Mark. Tell us a little bit about how you came to set up Atlis, because as the founder of Atlis, obviously the story is how you got there is very important.
Yeah, so I don't come from the automotive industry. I come from a different background in public safety. In a number of different sort of technical fields there. And the founding of Atlis, it started with this idea of no one's building electric trucks. I'm a truck guy, right? I love that. But there's sort of like this big gap there in terms of what's possible today and what you could potentially do with electrification. And no one was really chasing that at the time. So it started with that. And as we dug into it, we realized there's much bigger opportunities out there beyond just being a vehicle manufacturer. And with the technology that we're building, we can go much further than that. And it's sort of blossomed into this sort of grander vision. But we have to stay focused, of course, in the beginning, especially when budgets are tight and timelines are critical.
You know, I don't think being outside the automotive industry is necessarily a bad thing. I grew up on a dairy farm, and I trained as a classical musician, was a teacher for 10 years, and then I became an automotive journalist. So, you know, whatever floats your boat and whatever gets you interested, you're here now and you're making a difference. But for someone who has come from outside the automotive field, you're very much a hands-on person when it comes to Atlis. A lot of people, a lot of founders, a lot of CEOs are very much hands-off. Everything I've seen of you thus far shows that you're very hands-on and you know what it is that you're talking about.
Yeah, so I'm not, like, as a leader and as the sort of founder and CEO of this company, I'm a big fan of, I will never ask someone to do something that I'm not willing to do myself. So to pat myself on the back a little bit, I cleaned the bathrooms earlier today because that had to be done. But it's, you know, I want to be in there in the trenches, right, with the team. This is hard work. This is not easy, it's difficult, it's frustrating, right, sometimes. And if Atlis is going to succeed, I view it as like, I'm not just asking someone else to do that for me. I'm going to be right there with them, right by their side, working through some of these challenges. And a lot of the technology and stuff we're developing, you know, that's a passion of mine. I'm an engineer by trade. I'm an innovator by experience, and product developer by experience, and therefore I love that, and I want to stay as close to that as I possibly can, realizing that you also want to hire people that are much smarter than you to solve these problems as well, and that's what we do focus on today as well.
Now, let's talk about where you are as a company right now. Atlas has come under some criticism, sometimes from myself, sometimes from others in the community. You have a website, you're showcasing the Atlas XT, the pickup that you're building, also the XT platform that pickup is based on. Ultimately, obviously, Atlas is going to be selling the pickup truck to independent customers, also to fleets, and then also you've got the effectively the chassis on cab design that you're looking to sell as well. Unlike a lot of companies out there that keep their development process very close to their corporate chest, Atlas seems to be kind of laying everything bare. You've got a YouTube channel that you are uploading regular content to where you're showcasing what's going on. You seem to be having a conversation at a very kind of grassroots level with fans and supporters. So perhaps you can tell us where you are, why you made that decision, because that obviously exposes you to a lot of criticism, and what the next kind of few months and years look like.
Yeah. When I started the company, I kind of had this vision of, I'm talking to investors and I'm talking to these people. And as you're going through this, there's not a lot of connection to the end customer. And I thought, why build a company kind of most companies, when you see startups, right, you don't see it until kind of that beautiful point where all the ugliness has been done and it's something flashy to show. And then they keep all the ugliness in the background. And in reality, there's what they're showing, and then there's reality that's there. And I thought when I started this, that there was this idea of let's build a company that is, we're not just asking our customers to put a reservation in. We're basically showing them, this is the vision, this is where we're going. You can either give us money as a reservation and we'll just keep taking money from you, or we can make you a part of the company. You could invest in us, you can help us grow. And if you believe in the vision, you believe in where we're going, share in that success. Don't just be a customer, be a partner. Now, when we talk about where Atlas is at, we're very early stages. And I think that's somewhat obvious by some of the stuff that's out there. And we're very much so focused not on just building a prototype like that flashy thing you see. We're very focused on the technology that goes into it. Because as someone famously said, and we know who that person is, it's easy to build a prototype. It's hard to get the stuff into production and scale. So Atlas is focused on not just building the prototype, but we're focused on the hard things that allow us to scale.
And we kind of sort of an example of that earlier this week with the demonstration that you had online of the cell design. I'd like to come to cell design a little bit later, but in that video you also had a wooden mock-up, which a lot of people kind of commented on. That is not necessarily what you might think of when you think of an electric vehicle being developed. So tell us what the purpose of that is and why wood?
Why wood? Wood is cheap. It's easy to work with. It's very quick to work with. So that particular mock-up that you saw in the background, which we've showed on a couple other videos, is basically a form, fit, function prototype of the interior of the Atlas truck. So when we're looking at ergonomics, seat placement, steering wheel placement, vent placement, screen like all of those details that we also do in VR and all those other things. And a lot of companies spend a lot of money on that. We looked at an opportunity. Well, we need to make very fast decisions. We need to do it on a budget because we're on a budget, and we need to get the best possible results out of that. So why don't we just grab some wood? Let's cut this up. Let's mock it up. We can cut, move it, do all this stuff very quickly. And to give you an example, in 3 weeks, we went from a drawing that's in CAD and everything else that's going on there to a semi-functional mock-up of the interior where everything is, as well as some functional pieces in there in 3 weeks to get answers that go back into the design as we're looking to sort of move forward with that prototype. So we basically built a buck that gave us all of the data necessary to finalize the details of the XT truck, particularly the interior. We did that for 3 weeks, and we did that on a very low budget, very successfully. And that's what we do here. I don't care about flashy fanciness. I care about data and answers and making decisions and doing so quickly. And that's what that allowed us to do.
When you were designing the Atlis XT, I've noticed through your various YouTube videos that you've actually split the development up into those individual groups that are very specifically focused. So you had one video, for example, where you were focusing on your air suspension system. So all of the Atlis vehicles have special air suspension, and you were literally had the suspension setup and were working with that and testing that. In another one, we see Atlis working on the chassis with a roll cage over the top. It seems that you are looking at speciality in a very focused way that not all automakers have the luxury of doing. So you bring those parts together fairly regularly, make sure that they're still all going in the same way? Or are you just sending those groups out to develop those parts and then having a plan of putting them together later on?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. So one, we're very vertically integrated. So I know that term's used a lot, but we're, like you mentioned, chassis and suspension, and we have motor groups, and we have these different, but these teams, they work together constantly in a day-to-day basis. So they don't sort of build in isolation and silos. There is no up and down decision making. There is no, it's across, right? The only time things go up is when it's like we have to make a decision on a product, right, that's market impacting. Outside of that, the teams work together horizontally. It's a very flat organization. But we do have specialized teams. The company is actually broken up into 3 pillars. We have the energy team, which is focused on battery charging technology. We have the platform team, which is focused on some of the things you talked about. Everything outside of, say, sheet metal seats, windows, doors, headlights, but actually a little bit of headlights because they're doing the control side of it. So they do all the body controls and everything else. And then you have the vehicle team, which is right now is actually the smallest team within the group that's focused on the sexy thing that everybody wants to talk about, right? Which is the XT pickup truck. But yeah, we're very focused on technology, building that, testing it, getting it to work, figuring out how do we scale that, right? As we sort of start to launch products next year. And then there's the cool stuff that's out there that everybody wants to talk about, which is the truck itself.
One of the other things that I've noticed about Atlis, Mark, is that while you are a small company, I think you told me earlier on, 45 people currently employed at Atlis, you have a really diverse workforce, and that is quite different to the auto industry norm, where it tends to be a very male-dominated industry. So was that done consciously, or was it just a case of finding people who you knew could do the job?
The latter, definitely. It's not intentional, right? It's not anything. It's just we have everyone that we found so far. It's sort of more of an organic. We're reaching out, trying to find people that fit the skill sets that we need, and it's just worked out that way. And that's a fantastic point. I mean, we are primarily a female-led company outside of myself. Most of our leaders, like Huda and Tiff and Annie and Tamika, right? They're all women. Very diverse culture here, and it's a really fun place to work. I think because of that, it's a little family because we're still small, right? But it's a very exciting place to work, and it just sort of happened that way. And hopefully we can continue that trend as we sort of grow the company here over the next few months.
The other thing that's very interesting is you've kind of gone the same route as the Unity One team and some of the other European startups. Mm-hmm. You've gone for crowdfunding rather than the now, unfortunately, standard reverse IPO backdoor onto the stock market.
Right.
That's a really big social point that you are making, because a lot of companies, especially in the startup world, they're more interested in having large amounts of money than where that money comes from. So tell me about that decision. How did Atlis as a company come to the decision of, no, we're not going to go kind of backdoor onto the stock market like Nikola, like Fisker, like Canoe, like so many other companies, and instead go, we're going to put a product out there and we're going to ask the people that will be buying our cars to support us?
Well, something to think about. There's a couple things to think about, but the one, I guess, most important thing is, how do you validate that what you're doing as an organization, both from a product standpoint to your vision, to your beliefs, right, to your culture and everything that you're doing, what is one way that you can really validate that from day one, when it's just one person till, it's lots of people, right, that are here and you're doing a lot of different things. And crowdfunding was an opportunity for us to do it. And no one has actually done that successfully, right? No one has ever done that successfully. I plan to do that successfully. Now, I will not say that, our plans for IPOs and things like that are down the road, right? We're focused on product first and validation in the market and getting things right. And this was an opportunity. I looked at it as, hey, this is an opportunity for instead of just telling people, give me money for a deposit, and I think I mentioned this a little bit earlier when we were talking, is instead of asking for money for a deposit, which I don't actually think has a lot of value these days, and we're hearing feedback that it doesn't, why don't we make those customers a partner in this? Why don't we make them a part of the journey? And I don't want to sound too sappy, but there's something there to that, where when we say we have 30,000 reservations, which we have above that today, a very large chunk of those are not, we don't charge for reservations, but a large chunk of those are investors. They're committed to what we're doing, and we're committed to delivering the product that we've told them that we are going to deliver. And that's a very powerful thing in the market. That's greater value than a $100 refundable deposit, because that's a risk that they were willing to take, and they believe that what we're doing is the right path. And that's how we get market validation. They're also the first people to tell us when we suck. So, I mean, there's a win-win there, right? If we're making the wrong decisions, they're going to come back and tell us.
And I think that's a really hard place to be as a startup.
Right.
I think it's quite an admirable place to be. I know that we try and run our company in the same way. We are very open about what we're doing. We're very open about our money, where we get our money from, how we spend our money. And the viewers watching this right now may not know this, but if you ever come to a live event with us and we have a supporter meetup afterwards, I lay out the finances there for everybody to hear. Nothing is hidden under the table for the same reason. It's kind of that concept of, if I'm really serious about what we are doing, and I'm sure you feel the same way about Atlis, then people should be able to see that we are putting our money where our mouth is, and we're actually leading in a way that we hope people will appreciate. So the crowdfunding, how is that going right now?
It's going okay. There's some challenges, I think, in the world today that, there's controversy in this market, and you brought up some examples earlier. There was the elections that were going on here in the United States, right? There's a lot of different things going on, and those are just all sort of challenges that we have as we kind of progress here. But from our perspective, it's going okay. We have goals, we have things that we're trying to do, right? And as we continue to progress, you have to think of it like this: product is our ultimate goal, right? It's the energy battery group. We have interested parties there. It's platform. We have interested parties there. Everybody wants the truck, right? I want a truck, right? But that's the cool things. But right now, our product is progress. It's what we put out there. It's how open we are. It's showing people the process that we're going through. And as we continue to do that, we find that people become more interested, right? They come on board, and funding it's going okay. I think you alluded to it earlier. Trust is a big thing, and everybody has to earn that. So we can earn that in private, or we can earn it in the public. Either way, we're going to get dinged by people that hate us for it. So we might as well earn it in the public.
So now let's turn kind of to the meat of the matter here.
Mm-hmm.
You've made some really big claims for the
Yes.
Atlis XT. I
Yes.
mean, you look at them on paper, I'm looking at those specs, I'm going, how on earth are you going to achieve those things? Massive range, $45,000 starting price, insane charging capabilities. So let's talk about how those specs were achieved. Are those goals for you? Or are they things that you have kind of sat down and gone, no, we can actually achieve this with this technology that we know we have that we're bringing to market?
So it always starts with a customer. And when I think about myself as a truck guy, or I think about our customer base, those diehard gas and diesel customers, they have a list of things that'll make them sort of cross that chasm of, I'll never go electric, to why did I not ever go electric from the beginning, right? And it's that sort of going from a no to a yes. And those things start with, well, it starts with time, first of all. So any new innovation and product idea cannot take time away from your life. And charging is one of those aspects. The other side of it is capability. People buy trucks that are not always completely capable, but they buy them because of what the thought about what they could do and what they can do. You buy a small little V6 truck knowing that people love the big V8 truck that's there. So these start off with, what are the requirements? What are the must-haves? There's the wish list, right? Which is kind of like everybody wants to have those things, right? Those are the cool things. And then there's the must-haves, the things that are super important. So we focus on that, and we sort of let the wish list sit off in the corner until it's time to grab one of those things. And being a startup and not coming from the industry, but understanding some of the technology around battery technology and motors, gearboxes, and stuff like that, that affords us an opportunity to do something from the very bottom of that list, which is battery cells, all the way up to hit those goals. Now, those are always targets, but anyone who's good at product development understands that you don't build something and test it and see how it's going to do and then try to launch that. You set requirements, you build to those requirements, and then launch against those requirements, because those are the things that the market said we must have. And that's really what kind of makes Atlis different. When we hear things like, oh, they haven't tested it, they haven't released EPA ratings and all this other stuff, to give that as an example, Atlis doesn't design to EPA rated criteria. We're designing to real world, and real world is towing on a highway at 65 miles an hour here in the US. I'll do the kilometer calculation later for that one, but that's real world. So everything that we're doing, that's why when we talk about price and we talk about capability and things like that, what are the biggest factors driving that? It starts with the batteries and it works its way out. So let's start there before we ever build a truck. Let's solve that problem and then work our way out from there.
So you could say, in a way, that Atlis is more of a technology company right now than it is an automobile manufacturer. Is that something that you're comfortable with in terms of definitions?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm absolutely, I would say that Atlis is a technology company. We're an engineering company before we're ever an automotive company. And we're going to apply that technology and that innovation to the automotive space as well as other things down the road.
Which brings us to what I'm sure a lot of people watching this video are wanted to hear. And I'm sorry I've teased you by waiting right until kind of the end of the interview to discuss batteries. But Atlis's special sauce, reading between the lines, is its battery technology. Now, batteries are incredibly complicated. In the automotive world, they're even more so because of the additional strains and high current demands that exist in the automotive world, the extremes of temperature, the need to rapidly charge those batteries, and then you've got the lifespan. You know, it's not like your cell phone where you're going to get a new cell phone in 2 years' time, so it really doesn't matter to you, that first person who buys it, if that battery is going to be dead in 3 years' time, because you're probably going to switch it out for new hotness in 2 years' time. With an electric vehicle, that battery needs to last for a long time, especially if it's a work vehicle. You know, people buy work trucks, they drive them hard for 5 years, maybe even 10 years, before then changing them for a new model. And it has to be reliable, and it has to be dependable in the way that that vehicle behaves. It has to be predictable. It's no good being, getting in the car one morning when it's below freezing and your car suddenly not being able to get you to the work site, or not being able to charge as quickly as you want to. Atlis's battery technology is very different to some of the other companies out there, but I saw some corollaries between what you're working on and maybe what Tesla has been working on with regard to getting power out of the battery pack and into the battery pack. So Mark, let's go back to kind of first principles here and discuss why the cylindrical cell, the pouch cell that have been used in the electric auto industry for many, many years is something that Atlis is not going to be using.
Well, the reason that they're used is cost and existing infrastructure. Those are the only two reasons that they're used out there. Cylindrical cells have been around for a very long time, right? Think original laptop batteries, and even before that. I'm not thinking Energizer Bunny batteries either. That's a totally different technology, but they've been around for a long time, so it was an easy move to grab those and pull it in. Pouch cells, which is in all of your electronic devices today, those are very cheap to manufacture. They're very cheap to automate. It's a lot of sort of flexible products, right, kind of sandwiched together. The reason why Atlis didn't go that route was because, and you sort of hit that nail on the head, and when we think truck, and when I think truck, I think work, I think harsh environments. You brought up cold. I think my dad, when I was a kid, he owned a repair shop and towing service. And I remember him getting up at 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning in northern Michigan. And he has to go out there, get in his truck, start it up. It might be sitting in the snow, might be a blizzard happened overnight. It's freezing cold. He's got to plow his way out of the driveway, might have to plow his way down the road, and then he's got to go out and he's got to do something, and he might be out there for hours, right, pulling a car out of a ditch at an accident scene, whatever that is. He needs that dependability. So if we're going to solve this problem, we had to start at that base level. Cylindrical cells and pouch cells, cheap and easy to manufacture, but they don't necessarily do well when it comes to high power output, right, and fast charge times. Because when it comes to fast charge times, there's a number of things there that are critical. You're trying to solve, like, you push too much energy in, it's going to heat up, so you got to solve that problem. You're going to get degradation and breakdown of the electrolyte. You got to solve that problem. You're going to get the active layer breaks down. You got to solve that problem. And those are, the electrolyte is kind of what the ions pass through, right, and go from the anode to the cathode or cathode to anode. The active layers are kind of the squeegee layer that's on the copper and aluminum sheets for the anode and cathode. And those things break down when you're doing things like that, when you're either discharging at high rates or charging at high rates in extreme cold and extreme hot.
And it was really interesting. I was talking to someone many years ago who's been working in batteries for their entire life, and they explained that deformation happens at the microscopic level and actually can sometimes stop individual ions from being able to be released from the active surface or from reattaching themselves to the active surface, depending on which way they're flowing. And that is one of the problems that can cause the premature aging. Obviously, heat. Nissan Leaf is a great example, especially the early Nissan Leafs, those Leaf batteries overheating, suffering from premature battery aging. Mm-hmm. But also, issues with I squared R losses, as the batteries, you try and put more current in, the battery resists that, which heats the battery up, which in of itself can cause problems at the molecular level. You've come up with a Z-fold design, and
Yeah.
it's a like I was alluding to earlier, the idea is one, I don't necessarily would call it tabless. I suppose it is tabless, but you can pull energy out at the sides rather than forcing the energy to go all the way through the battery to come out at a tab at either end. So tell us about that.
Well, it's so we've got IP around a number of different like approaches to this, and what it really came down to is like typical battery cooling. Let's say Tesla or anybody else in the market, most anybody else in the market, they cool on the like side of the cylindrical cell, and when you think about pulling heat out of that, think about all those wraps that are inside there, right? And you're generating heat in the center, and there's a conductor, an insulator, a conductor, an insulator, a conductor, an insulator. Insulator, insulator, think about that, just that one word. And as you're trying to pull energy out of it, it's very hard to pull it through that insulator. So what Atlis actually did was, one, we eliminated the tabs inside of the battery. The tab is typically like you have a jelly roll and you have this little tab that sticks upright and current travels through that. So think about current traveling through a very long resistive wire, right, as it travels through that jelly roll and then out through this tiny little wire at the top. And that becomes a bottleneck, it becomes a heat source, it becomes a problem. So what we do is in our technology, we're doing a Z-fold architecture inside that actually connects directly to the electrodes and can connect directly to the edges of the battery. So when I think of like my phone, I'll use this as an example. You have connections here, and then the other polarity might be connected all the way around here on the edges, but not through this side and not through this side. Because that's actually the hardest, it turned on. That's the hardest sort of direction to pull heat. So when we think about charging very quickly, let's just not focus on dendrites and breakdowns or anything like that. Let's just focus on heat generation and extracting heat from it. So we want to create the shortest path, the most parallel path possible from a current standpoint, from an energy transfer standpoint, both thermally and electrically. And by creating basically these stacked layers that connect directly to the conductive sides of that pack, one, we create a bunch of parallel wire paths, for lack of a better term. Think energy flowing and like a bunch of parallel resistors versus series resistors, but very short path. So it's a short wire versus it's a short wire versus a very long wire that current has to travel through. And there's no tiny wire at the end, right? That's like a fuse that it has to travel through. That also works for heat transfer. So when we try to pull heat out of that, we're trying to pull it off a distance like this versus, you can't even see my arms, right? But like this massive distance out there.
And being able to kind of increase, I suppose, the effective surface area, for want of a better phrase, the amount of surface area per cell that you can use to extract heat and also to extract current or put current in.
Yes.
That means that you're putting those individual parts of the battery under a lower stress, a lower strain, both mechanically and electrically.
Yes.
And that should also lead to a longer life?
Yeah, so it's both mechanically, electrically, which is also from a chemistry perspective, it's less stress. And we do a number of things. We describe it in that really long video, which I think you watched and referenced, where if we can reduce the resistance inside that cell, then we can reduce the amount of heat generated. But we raise the temperature of cell to reduce that resistance. We also raise the temperature of the cell because there's a point at which things like dendrite growth do not occur per a given C rate or given charge rate. So we actually raise the temperature, but when you do that with a conventional cell, you can't control that temperature. You basically, it continues to heat and heat and heat. It doesn't matter what you do, and then you run into a roughly 120 C point, right, where the cell then starts to self-generate heat basically, and you get a runaway condition. So we heat the cells to reduce that. We heat the cells to minimize and more or less prevent dendrite growth. There's a different plating mechanism that actually occurs there. But then we also have to rapidly cool it so we don't get prolonged high temperature use out of it, which leads to active layer breakdown and some of the electrolyte breakdowns that can occur.
So let's kind of let's go back a little bit. What you're
Yeah.
effectively doing is what a lot of other automakers are now starting to do in the industry. You know, Tesla has got this profile. If you're heading to a supercharger, the car will heat up the battery pack so that when it arrives at the supercharger, the battery pack is warm. Porsche does the same thing for the Taycan. I know that General Motors is looking to do the same thing with its Ultium battery pack. So that's essentially what we're talking about here. Atlis heating up the battery to a very tightly controlled temperature zone where the delta between the hottest and coldest parts of the battery pack are within, what, tenths of a degree, something like that?
You're trying to stay within about a degree.
Right.
Yeah.
And then that allows you to dump large amounts of current into the battery pack. Once charging is complete, you're then cooling that pack back down so that it can then be traditionally used. Does that sound like a fairly good breakdown of it?
Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty good breakdown. The difference might be the temperature at which we're raising it to, and then the other differences, and I'll give you an example. We've looked at two other industry standard cells that are in the market that are used by some of those companies you mentioned. And Atlis is, in our cell design that we're developing right now, our battery cell that we're developing right now, we are 4 times more effective at either putting heat in or extracting heat from those cells than those existing ones that are on the market today. So the best you will probably ever get with an existing solution is probably around 27 minutes from, if you were to do our process, which is from the start of the heating process to the cooling process, 27 to 30 minutes is roughly the best you will ever get. Whereas Atlis, you talk about like the pre-charging as you're headed to the charging station, and then there's a cooling step at the end of it. We fit all of that in a 15-minute window.
Wow.
And that's the key, because when I think about my life and I think about the use case of people that we're trying to market this product to, I don't always know when I'm going to go and plug in. And if you're like me driving, we own a Model 3. If you're like me doing that, I'm playing with a map all the time because I know where I'm going. And therefore, you just kind of randomly stroll into a supercharging station at whatever time. You didn't tell the car you were going to do that beforehand, so it hasn't prepped yet, which leads to longer charge times. Or maybe it's, I have half a pack left, and I was like, I want to charge this now instead of waiting because I just passed one. I'm like, I'll pull in real quick and do that. So I think about real world versus constantly having things planned. I think about chaos.
Right.
And when you think about chaos, it's spontaneous decisions. And I want that experience to be consistent regardless of the precondition that led me there.
The challenges, obviously, of developing that cell must have been quite intense. Tell me how you came about that development. Did somebody come to Atlis with the cell technology in mind? Are you building on work that you'd previously done, or was this kind of ground up, let's build a battery, build it in the real world or build it virtually? Have you used any assistive technologies to get to this point?
It's a combination of two of those. It's background that I have and experience that I've learned over my career in battery technology. I come from a space where everything we do is battery powered. And then it's ground up solving those problems and challenges. When I walked into this company and realized, like, I can't just go buy something that works, I pulled from my history and said, if we do this, this is what we'll do. And since then, we've been working on perfecting that, understanding it, right? Making, like, sort of checking all those boxes to make sure that, as you alluded to before, it's great that you can fast charge, but if I can't do that for 1,000,000 miles, then what's the point? So it's understanding how we overcome those challenges and then focusing on how do we get that price down from within the next, say, 3 years so we can really, truly support a cost competitive product to what exists in the market today. I'm not a big government subsidy fan. I think if you're going to build a product and you're going to change the world, you would better do it in such a way that I don't need help, that the market will drive that change versus trying to force that into them with benefits and incentives or just forced regulation.
You kind of alluded to a timeline of maybe 3 years. Is that when you are hoping to have a finished product ready to go?
I'm always ambitious. 3 years, we're hoping to be at a scalable level of production that we can bring our costs down in line to support that $45,000 price target that we're targeting. Now, all of that, of course, is dependent on, can we raise enough funding in time? Can we grow the team fast enough? Can we execute fast enough? Those three things, right, are always a challenge. Can you raise funding fast enough? Can you find the right people fast enough? Because our team is 45 today. It needs to be much bigger to get us there. And can we sort of hit those development milestones fast enough? We'd like to be, the battery technology and platform technology, would like that to be in the market with strategic customers by the end of next year. And then the XT, I would like to get just one, into a customer's hands by the end of next year. And that is ambitious. That's not mass volume production. That's one truck. Because I believe in build one, build two, build 10, build 100, build 1,000, and grow from there. I'm not going to wait until we can do 35,000 a year to launch. We're going to learn things. We're going to break things. We're going to understand how to properly scale on that end and everything else. And we're going to do that as fast as we can, but we need to build we need to build confidence in the market. The brand has to earn the right to be out there. And we're going to do that with the first one, the second one, the 100th one, and grow from that standpoint.
We should also quickly, before I come to the kind of the final questions, talk about charging. I know on your website, you've got a picture of a charge inlet. You've talked about it. It's a proprietary system, right?
It is, yeah. The next question you're probably going to ask me is, are you going to keep that proprietary, or are you going to open that up?
Right.
So we do have there is a business model built out for a charging network. Basically, we're not going to, it is proprietary, but if we can get other automakers to adopt that as battery technology catches up from their perspective, which also we're looking to market our own technology for them, to utilize that
another
network.
One of my questions.
Yeah. We'll open it right up. So we have again, I think bigger than just selling cars. It's how do we build this ecosystem of solutions? And we'll open that up. We've got business models built around that. I'm a bigger fan of making it available and then letting them sort of go from there.
Obviously, you said you've got this proprietary charging system that you're open to exploring, but when you bring those first cars or trucks to market, as you said, you want to build one truck and then 5, then 10. Those charging networks are not going to be open, and I can't imagine Atlis suddenly deploying 1,000 charging stations to support a few trucks. So how is that going to work in the early days?
So there's two strategies there. Obviously, we're looking at, there's a CCS compatible inlet on the vehicle because that's the most obvious network to get out there. Electrify America and ChargePoint and all these other different networks that are available. That's a very easy integration for us. And then, of course, there's the inevitable question of Tesla and whether or not we would integrate with them. Obviously, we're open to that. We unsuccessfully had conversations very early on. But as we sort of progress and stuff, we're definitely open for that. But ultimately, the goal is that Atlis network. It's that 15-minute charge time. It's that very quick sort of in and out. And when we think about charging networks and deployments, I think about, how do we get greater throughput, right, for a single station versus 2 versus 3, 4, 5, and 6? One station can do 4 vehicles in an hour. So we need less stations to handle a larger quantity of potential vehicles that are out there. So our focus will be highway, like local for early customers, highway corridors after that, roughly 150-mile spacings in between there. And then, of course, we'll grow. We'll go east-west, then north-south here in the U.S. to start, and then grow from there.
Final question. There are a lot of pickups coming to market. If all of the companies that are developing pickups bring them to market, there's going to be a lot. The Rivian, Tesla Cybertruck, Chevy's working on an electric version, probably of the Silverado. We obviously have the Hummer. which is really more of a sport truck. In a similar vein, the Rivian is more of a sport truck. We've got the Bollinger B1. We've got Lordstown. It's going to be kind of quite a crowded marketplace if all of these companies actually do what they say they're going to do. How is Atlis going to survive against all of that competition?
So I think it's interesting. We all know it's a large market. It's 2.4 million vehicles per year, right? It's 20 million vehicles roughly in the United States that exist on the road today, it just in the pickup truck side of the market. But when I think about it, I don't think about Tesla, Rivian, Bollinger, Workhorse, or Lordstown. I almost slipped there. Lordstown and some of these others as being a competitor to Atlis. I think everyone's going to sort of find their niche. Atlis, again, we're focused on work, we're focused on capability. While most of these are lifestyle or the low end of the work segment or super high price segment that's out there, Atlis is really going for that class 2B to class sort of 5 truck space with real true capabilities within those spaces. And from a business perspective, like I said before, we're not just an auto manufacturer. We're a technology company, an engineering company. We're building an ecosystem. My goal is not just to build vehicles and sell vehicles. We're looking at the entire ecosystem and infrastructure that's there. How do we build a seamless experience where you as an operator, you sign up, you pay a monthly fee, it's your truck for that period of time, you don't have to share it, and you can charge, you can get it fixed, you can maintain it, you can travel across the country, you can work across country, you can tow, do whatever it is you need to do in the most seamless, easiest experience you possibly can. And it really means owning all of those different pieces that are along that sort of value chain that's there.
Mark, thank you so much for joining me. It's been a great discussion. I wish Atlis all the best. You've got a lot of work ahead of you, but I think you're all very cognizant of that fact. Let's hope that everything goes your way and that we're all having a chance to test drive the XT at some point in the not too distant future. Thank you for everybody who's watching at home. As always, thanks to the folks on my right for being our $15 to $49 a month Patreon supporters. Thank you to my $50 a month patrons. That's John Lyons, Raging Fellows, Jeffrey Songster, and Tesla in the Gong. And our special thanks to our $100 a month Patreon supporters. That's Marcel Ward, Reggie Watts, JP Fagerback, Sean Ueda, Will Graylin and Ian. If you'd like to join those amazing people and become a Patreon supporter yourself or support us using Bitcoin or Ko-fi, you'll find the links below, as well as a link to our Discord chat server. So sign up and come and join in the fun. Discord is free to join. You'll also find a link to our swag store. The holidays are nearly here, and it's a great place to get some TE swag for your loved ones. You can't go to the shops, so shop virtually, support the channel, and get some nice warm winter clothes to keep everyone happy. I will be back very soon with another episode. Check out the suggested video after the names have stopped scrolling. And as always, wear a mask, keep evolving.